Okay, this is a Unit 7 test review for level. Alright, so on the first problems, you're adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials. So on the first one, we'll do number 2. On the first one, you're just combining what's alike. So I'm just looking at the variables and the exponents to see what's alike, and then I'm just combining. So I'm not adding exponents, I'm not doing any of that. So, for instance, I have a negative 4x to the fourth y. I also have a negative 3x to the fourth y. So if I combine that, that gives me negative 7x to the fourth y. Alright, I also notice I have a 14xy and a negative 8xy. That gives me 6xy. And then if I combine all the x's here, that's a 3, a positive 3 and a negative 5, so negative 2x. So again, just combining what's alike. Alright, on on the next ones, you're subtracting. So the main thing with the subtracting is you have to make sure that you distribute that negative. A lot of people will distribute it right here only, but you got to do it to all of them. So if I distribute that negative, this becomes a positive 2x squared y, a positive 10xy, and then a negative 7. So if I combine what's alike, that gives me x squared y here, and 2x squared y here. That's 3x squared y. I also have an 8xy and a 10xy, and that will give me 18xy. And then I have a negative 6 and a negative 7, and that gives me negative 13. So again, the main thing is you really have got to make sure you distribute that negative. You have to, you have to, you have to. Alright, on the next ones, you are doing some multiplying. So with these, you can set up a box to work these out. Some people will prefer to, go here, here, and here, and here, here, and here. That's fine, okay? But remember, you could also draw a box. I would put the 2x and the 5y here, and then I'd put the 3x squared minus 4xy, and then 2y squared here. Alright, so I'm going to start just multiplying all of it. So 2x times 3x squared is 6x cubed. If I multiply these two, I get negative 8x squared y. And if I multiply here, I get 4xy squared. Down here, I get 15x squared y. Then I get negative 20xy squared. And the last one would be 10y cubed. So if I start combining what's alike, there's nothing to combine the 6x cubed with, so 6x cubed. I can combine these, because they both have x squared y. So again, when I'm just combining, I'm not adding exponents. You only add exponents when multiplying. Okay, I can also combine these. That gives me negative 16. And there's nothing to combine the 10y cubed with, so I'm just going to rewrite it. Right, on number 7, because you're only multiplying one thing, you could set up a box. It would be like a 1 by 3. You could set it up that way, but I think on these, it's sometimes just easier to look at it like this, where you just take each of them and multiply it. So for instance, you'd first get 6x, then you get 3x squared, and then I'm going to get negative 21x cubed. Now if I were to put it in order, because you do want to start with the highest degree, I would just rewrite it like that. Okay, on number 11 and 12, the main thing here is to make sure you understand that when you're squaring something, it means times itself. So what you should have here is 3x squared plus 2 times 3x squared. Oh, I'm sorry, 3x plus 2. Sorry, not 3x squared. 3x plus 2 times 3x plus 2. Alright, you could set up a box here, so I'm going to do that. So I'll put 3x here and 2 here, 3x here and 2 here. Alright, so here I'm going to have 9x squared, and then 6x, and then 6x, and then 4. And then if I combine what's alike, there's nothing to combine the x squared with, so 9x squared plus 12x plus 4. Alright, on these down here, let's start with 15 and 16. I'm only going to do one of these. So when you have them set up like this, really all you need to do is you need to just divide the coefficients and then subtract the exponents. So remember there's ones right here. So if I were to divide 12x cubed by 6x, I would get 2x squared. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2, so x squared. And then on the next one, I would divide 6 squared by 6. That would just give me an x. And then on the next one, I would get negative 6. Because if I were to subtract the exponents, it would go away. Alright, on these top ones, I'm actually going to use that synthetic division. I'm pretty sure everybody learned it. So with the synthetic division, remember when we're dividing, so for instance, let me do 14 first. I'll do 14 first, so y'all understand why we're having to do that on the synthetic. Okay, so I like to underline that and then multiply that, or highlight that. Alright, so I'm going to start here. I start here and always go back here. So x times what will give me x squared? Just an x. And then I take that x and multiply it by what I highlighted. So x times x is x squared, and x times 5 is 5x. So remember, we're really subtracting these, so I have to distribute that negative to both of these, and that's why I can always cancel this out and then flip that. So that gives me 5x, and then I'm going to do plus 18. And again, I come back here. X times what will give me 5x? That's a 5. 5 times x is 5x plus 25. I cancel and flip, and that gives me negative 7. So to do my remainder, I'm going to do minus 7 over x plus 5. Okay, so if I come back down to the synthetic, come back over here, just like I was having to flip things over here, I have to flip it over here. So instead of negative 2, I'm going to use a 2, and then I'm going to list out my coefficients and my constants. So the first one would be a 1, so that's a 1, 3, negative 4, and negative 12. Alright, so I'm going to drop that, and remember, you're multiplying everything on the outside. So 2 times 1 is 2, and then I'm going to combine. 2 times 5 is 10, and then I combine. 2 times 6 is 12, and I combine. So there's not a remainder there. Now, I'm going to start off with 1 degree less. So see how this started off with an x squared, but my answer starts off with an x? So because this started off with an x cubed, I'm going to start off with an x squared. So my final answer here would be x squared plus 5x plus 6. And that's my answer. Alright, on the back, we're doing factoring. Now, this is the sum and difference of cubes. So sum and difference of cubes. And we use that acronym SOAP when we did it. Same, opposite, always positive. So the reason I know that these are sum and difference of cubes is because they have an x cubed and then a perfect cubed. An x cubed and perfect cubes. An x cubed and perfect cubes because there's a 1 in front of here. And again, same thing, a cubed and a 1 and an 8. They're all perfect cubes. So if I set up the pattern, so for instance on 17, I'm going to have the same sign, then I'm going to have the opposite sign, and the last one is always positive. So SOAP. Same, opposite, always positive. Alright, so now I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cube root of these. So the cube root of x cubed is x, and the cube root of 27 is 3. So that's my A and my B. Then I'm going to square them. So x squared is x squared, 3 squared is 9. And then for the middle part, I multiply those two. Now, I don't care that that's a negative. Once I've done the SOAP, I don't mess with the signs anymore. So here, what's 3 times x? 3x. All right, so for instance, on number 19, I do the same thing. It's a positive, so same, opposite, and always positive. Again, there's a 1 there, just like there was here, but the cube root of 1 is just 1, so I'm just going to put an x. Cube root of 1 is 1, so that's my a and my b. Then I'm going to square them, so x squared, and then 1 squared is 1, and then I multiply them for the middle. 1 times x is x. Okay, on the next ones, there's two different types of factoring here. I'm gonna do 23 first. So, for instance, on number 23, as soon as you see that it has 4 terms, you need to draw a box, because there are 4 sections on the box. And then I'm going to start filling the box in. And I'm going to start pulling out greatest common factors. Now, there's always x's on the side. The only problem is I need an x cubed. So because there's 2 here and 3 here, they share 2. So I'm going to put the squared here. And then I also need an 8. So I notice here that there's not a greatest common factor except for 1. But if I come this way, the greatest common factor of 8 and 64 is 8. Okay, now I can start building the box. So 8x squared times what gives me negative 64x squared? That's going to be a negative 8. And x times what gives me x? And that's a 1. So your final answer here is 8x squared plus 1 times x minus 8. Okay, now the main thing, when y'all are doing factoring, you've got to make sure you factor out GCF. Always the first thing you do, factor out a GCF. Okay, so on 21, I'm looking at this, and I'm noticing that I can pull out a 2, because all those are divided by 2. But what I'm also noticing is that these have 2 in common. So I can pull out an x squared. Alright, so what I would have left is x squared minus x minus 2. Now, I have to just be able to look at this and tell that I can factor more. So I can actually now ask myself, because there's a 1 there, what 2 numbers will multiply to get negative 2 and combine to get negative 1? Oh, I know, negative 2 and 1. So because your a is 1, I can go straight to the factors. So I have my original factor here. And then I take this, and that becomes another factor, x minus 2. And that becomes the other factor, x plus 1. All right, on the next one, so we're doing perimeter. So for perimeter here, you always want to make sure you're just adding all the sides. So add all sides. All right, so if I were to start adding all the sides, I notice I have a cubed here, but there's nothing to combine it with. I also have a 2x squared, a 2x squared, and another x squared. That gives me 5, so 5x squared. I also notice that I have a negative x here and a 3x here. So that gives me 2x and then plus 1. On the next ones here, you're finding area. So when you're doing area, you're just doing length times width, so area equals length times width. So all I would end up doing here is just multiplying these two. So if I could do 1 plus x times 2 plus 3x. You could set this up as a box also, but I'm going to do it this way. So 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3x is 3x. X times 2 is 2x. And then x times 3x is 3x squared. So my area here would equal 3x squared. I'm going to combine what's alike. So combine those. Plus 5x. Plus 2. Alright, on the last ones, this kind of just goes back to Unit 6 where you're talking about roots. So remember when we're talking about roots, they're where they cross the x-axis. So that would be x equals -2 and and x equals 1, and it equals 3. But when you write the factors, just like we've always done, they're the opposite. So this would be x plus 2, x minus 1, and then x minus 3. Okay, on the last one here, again, I'm looking at the roots. I've got 1 at 0, so x equals 0, x equals 1, and x equals 2. Now, to do the factors, the only thing that's kind of different about this is when it does 0. So when it crosses at 0, one of the factors is just an x. And then I do the opposites with the other ones. So x minus 1 and x plus 2. I'm sorry. Not 2, because it's the opposite. That should be a negative 2. All right, I hope that helps you. Make sure you go to Eagle's Nest if you need help or ask your teacher. And that's about it. Good luck.